So this is class number 1 on being able to navigate your emotions during recovery. Now remember, your emotions as you move past recovery or toward the end of recovery, it's gonna feel very different because you're gonna have a relationship with yourself and you're gonna be able to listen to your emotions. And I want you just to imagine that your emotions are like little children inside you, and little children inside you are just expressing whatever comes naturally and spontaneously. It doesn't mean it necessarily is congruent with the situation. It's congruent with the inside of themselves. It doesn't even mean that they've got themselves all managed and organized. It's just a reaction. And now, not all emotions are this way, and not all of your reactions are like kids. They're just not. But I want you just to imagine what it would be like to gather around your children or your animals or your little ones, your innocent ones, and they're just all natural. They're just all natural. And you say to them, okay guys, we all need to kind of figure out how to navigate this, because I know you want to be natural, but there are just some times when you can't just be bursting out in anger or just trying to love anyone. Or, I mean, come on guys, we need to kind of steer our path here. You're here to enjoy and experience and express. I get that. I want that for us. But we also have to work with a team. We have the other parts of our human being, our intellect, our society, our needs in the moment in terms of just quality of life, our physical body, our ability to cope and function. So you say to all your emotions, you all have to play on this big team. You don't get to be the only team player. You don't get to dominate the scenery. You can be among it. And it's very much like with children. It's like you have to teach them how to be, ideally, this wonderful, carefree, authentic individual, and at the same time, civilized and organized so that they can function and interact with people respectfully. How to respect yourself and respect other people means that you navigate your emotions with different levels of pulling them in and letting them out, and you dance with them. Another way that I look at emotions is this. Emotions are meant to be the spice of life. So if I'm needing protein and I'm going to eat a boiled egg, I really enjoy putting the following on my boiled egg. It's a little bit of salt, definitely some pepper, paprika's a nice touch, maybe a little chili powder. But bottom line, I'm eating that egg because if it has the omega-3s and 6s, it has wonderful protein, it has a very delicious, healthy source of lecithin, it's really good for my brain, it's really good for the muscles when I work out. So I'm thinking, and also it doesn't kill any animals. It's completely respectful. It's not a fertilized egg, so it's respectful of life, and it's also not killing any animals in the process. If I raise my own chickens, I'd be able to have it naturally. Okay, so there's my egg. It feels really wholesome and nice, and it's good for my body. But you notice the spices were salt and pepper and paprika, a little bit of chili. Or maybe today I'm going to add a little cilantro, a little bit of herbs on there. Maybe I want a little bit of rosemary. All of those herbs and spices are your emotions. So they're not the core of who you are. They are the spice of life. They're the pleasures of life. This is also true when we're talking about love. And so let's talk about love. I think that if you've been in an abusive situation, or you've been in a complicated relationship, or you've been in a long-term relationship, you recognize that love has different expressions inside yourself. So for the first 2 to 3 months, most relationships go through a wonderful period of limerence. Now I'm talking about a romantic relationship. That's when there's the height of the oxytocin chemical flushing through your body. It's the height of all the pheromones that are flowing, all those wonderful attraction hormones that are going. It's where you've got all this antidepressant fluid going through your body. It's just delightful, and we eat chocolate in order to have that same set of experiences. So being in love, so this 3 months, 2 to 3 months, is maybe 3 to 4, is the time period where people have this very idealization magic called limerence in some fields of research. This is the infatuation phase. So love is a delightful, wonderful thing to experience on that level. As a relationship, a healthy relation progresses, the infatuation begins to die down and the compatibility questions begin to increase. The first incompatibility issue that increases is can we both live our separate identities and still have connection? Can you be you and I be me and still have connection? And so that's kind of like, okay, so how do we play this? And then there is an ongoing thematic between how do you do you and how do we do me, and then how do we do us at the same time? How do we do this respectfully and still have love and connection and enjoyment with each other for the most part? Navigating the chores of life and navigating all the demands of life are part of that. Again, I'm going to say it again. This is the key. I want you to get this. How do we do you and how do we do me and how do we do us to mutual satisfaction, mutual respect, and experience connection, and maybe, hopefully, still be able to pull all that delicious oxytocin love and limerence and infatuation into the scenario of it all. So that's in a healthy relationship. Okay, as we go on, we see that from 6 months, there's another transition. A year, there's another transition. And at the end of 12 months, another, I already said it. So we see that they're different transition. At the end of 6 months, there's another transition. At the end of 12 months, there's another transition. At the end of 2 years, another transition. If you happen to get married, there's a transition from being parents and not being parents prior. There's also transition between when the child's 1 versus when the child's 3. And I find that most relationships really have a lot of difficulty. By the time the child has become 3 years old, they do not feel the same about each other. In fact, they become very disconnected to each other, maybe connected to the child, or one of them's connected to the child, but all sorts of manifestations of discord are evident. Okay, so that we're kind of tracing this situation. Now, sometimes abusiveness occurs when the child's born or a year into it in a relationship. Sometimes it begins at about age 3 if it didn't exist prior, because that's when the stresses and the strains are in the relationship, and when one individual may have been getting all of their needs satisfied and met, and suddenly they're not getting any of their needs satisfied and met because it's now the child that they're receiving so much attention. And there's jealousy and competition with the child. And there's also a feeling that somehow they've been let down, or they're no longer important because they were once the center of attention and now they're not. And when they're not the center of attention, they can respond to it by getting angry, belligerent, attacking, condescending, or they can withdraw and retreat. So it's when we see the attacking and the resentment and this kind of sense of entitlement that we see that a pretty healthy relationship can shift into a very narcissistic, horrible situation on one person's end, and the other person scrambling to try to meet everybody's needs and disappointing everybody, the child, the spouse. And that's often when we see this tension that actually can crawl into physical, emotional, verbal abuse or neglect. Okay, so there we have this kind of relationship pattern laid out. Well, where's love in all this? Well, you could still be loving your spouse during all of this. That doesn't mean you're expressing love and through all of this. And this expressing love now doesn't necessarily feel like you want to do it because they're being kind of snarky, or they're being mean, or they're being self-centered, or they're not helping you out, or you're just plain exhausted. And in not giving someone else their need, remember we talked about in the previous course that relationships happen and they exist because the other person feels good in your presence and you feel good in their presence. So now if the other person doesn't feel good in your presence and they happen to be aggressive and angry about it, they'll hurt you. And you might hurt them back because you don't feel good in their presence. So now you've got this mutual kind of antagonism, which might lead into actual spousal abuse or domestic violence. So this is like a trail of understanding what love is like. So love takes on a different form, and you have to be more conscious. Love now is not so much the feeling that inspires the actions. That's delicious when it is. Ooh, I want to eat that egg with all those spices. This is perfect. That's when the spices inspire eating something healthy. However, what happens when there's just not the energy or the money or whatever to get the spices in this metaphor, but you still have the egg? You can eat the egg, but you might not feel so motivated to eat the egg. The thing is that you still need to eat the egg, but you just know that those spices of emotions are missing for a period of time. If you're exhausted, those emotions don't necessarily come. Those emotions of love are numbed. They're exhausting because love's about wanting to meet needs and having needs met and having connection. And connection requires energy, activity, involvement, exchange, presence, sharing. connection requires each other to be part of each other's time and part of each other's activities and part of each other's mind and thoughts and goals. And so if there's no connection, you may still love the other person, but you don't have the connection. So is that connection temporary? Well, I'll tell you that parents who are raising small children, that disconnection is temporary. And you have to kind of migrate through it, work through it, try to fight to keep the connection. That's why they talk about date night being so important. And then move toward when the children no longer need such intense attention. At least that's the way we raise children more these days in our society, which once upon a time we did not. Children were there to serve the family function as soon as they were able, not vice versa. So you have to kind of navigate when you're going to feel the connection, but you do not want to rob the relationship of love. So you have to give expressions of love, like that egg, expressions of love, even though the spices may not be there. And that goes for two sides. And those expressions of love may begin to stimulate the spices, the love feelings, the oxytocin, the connection, because you've been courteous, you've been respectful, you've been caring, you've been attentive, even though maybe not all the spices were present. And so that's one thing I want you to think about in terms of love. So now let's say that you've had this horrible abuse situation or trauma situation that's not related to your love relationship. Well, you're going to be so completely engulfed in the experience of recovery that there's a possibility that you will no longer connect with that individual. You won't be as available. You won't have access to your emotions. You may have gone numb to cover up the experience and kind of separated from yourself and distance, kind of out of body, kind of living in the other end of a long tunnel and kind of functioning, but you're not really present. And you just need to call that out. Hey, I love you. Somewhere in there I know I have that egg. Somewhere in there I know I love you, but I also know that my emotions are completely a jumble. That I don't know where they are, what they're all about, and I know it's just because I'm under this influence of the trauma. I'm under this influence of the abuse. I'm under the process of needing to recover, and I am told that I will recover and that my emotions will come back. Now, soldiers that come back from horrible deployments often feel like they are so completely overwhelmed with their post-traumatic stress. Of course they are. That to be able to love this person who now kind of feels like a stranger, completely a person that doesn't know anything about what you went through, that's a hard one. You feel the disconnect and they feel the disconnect. And that whole ability to help them feel good in your presence and vice versa just feels odd. But you need to call it out. You need to talk about it. You need to say what it is. And for that love relationship, you may need to consider involving them in what you experience, so they're part of your experience. You may need to consider doing family therapy where there's this safe place to navigate and talk about it. Because what might happen is that other person might get so mad, so frustrated, so like shaking you, wake up, I want you to come back to me, that it becomes almost kind of violent the way they try to wake you up and get you back engaged. Because this love thing is all about connection, right? And so if you can connect when, oh yeah, I'm sorry, here you are, and you've blasted and you yelled at them like a parent might do to a child that's inattentive, it's not good. That's not a good approach. But it's in the service of trying to connect. It's in the service of trying to create, I feel good in your presence, I want to remember and go back to that. I want you to feel good in my presence, I want to remember that and go back to that. I value that. That's what I want to have now. So just be aware of this kind of dance with this experience of love. Now, on the other side of this, I want you to also realize that people may be there to love you so deeply, support you so authentically, be of assistance in such real, trustworthy, reliable ways, and you may just be pushing them all away because you know you can't either give them what they would want also in an exchanged and mutual relationship, or because you're just overwhelmed by any sort of emotions, or because you feel really bad that you can't find your love for them, like you can't locate it. You remember once upon a time maybe, but it just feels so amorphous or numb or not there. So you want to again remember, the spice of life are emotions. They're not what guides you. They're what makes it feel delightful. They're what makes it feel tasty. It's what makes it feel enjoyable, interesting. It's what makes you want to connect. But it isn't necessarily the most important thing. The most important thing at that time is to try to communicate, connect, provide the basics of needs, maybe the symbol of the need. Remember, like we talked about, I can't help you move because my back is broken, but here I can give you some money to hire a mover. That's kind of like, I love you, I can't give you this, but I give you a proximity. I can give you a facsimile to what it is you're wanting. So that's one way where you're attentive to the functions of love and the functions of a loving relationship. Okay, so now just notice that love in this last bit of scenarios is kind of like numb. And where is it? Because they're there to love you, but you can't feel it. You can't feel your own experience. You can't connect. Not only that, you feel so damaged, you're like you can't trust anybody, or you're so scattered or scrambled inside that you can't even do the basics of the chit chat. And that, of course, is when you need to be in therapy and you need to be talking to people who get you, so that you can once again rediscover you and integrate and awaken the person in you that does know what love feels like and what it is like with this person. In addition, also realize that to be on the receiving end of it may not be that comfortable for you. I don't know, I'm used to giving, I'm not used to receiving. Or I've learned to hate myself so much that there's no way I'm going to let you love me because I loathe myself, is another response to recovery from abuse and trauma. Is kind of a self-loathing. You just don't want to take any love from someone else. It's like, no, I don't deserve it. Or no, I can't take it because I can't return it. Or no, I can't feel it. I'm sorry, so I feel so guilty and bad, and therefore I don't want to take from you. So you have to be aware that you are in a need state, and to the best of your ability, you want to be able to create neutrality. But you're in a need state. You're in a needy state. Now, what will be helpful is if you allow the people that care about you to listen to this class, and then to have a discussion. Well, where are we? What's going on? What's it like? Who are you? What's it feel like? I'm so sorry you go through this. Maybe one of the responses. You'll learn a lot about the other person. If the other person has been abused and traumatized, they may do one or two things, or several things. One thing is they may totally get you. I know what it's like to understand. I know, here's how I'd like to support you. But on the other hand, there may be a little competition. Well, you went through that, but I went through this. Come on, get your act together. Or they may just want you to recover because they want you back. Oh, come on, get it back together just as quickly as you can. We don't have all this time. Or come on, we need you here. We want you here. Can you just recover? You're taking so long. It's like people have a lot of expressions that love you because of their own confusion with your needs, which we talked about in the previous course. But realize that in that experience of love that they're wanting to experience with you, you may find like, whoa, where is my ability to love, and what does love feel like, and what is this experience? It's not so necessarily intuitive. And then also I want us to talk about that if you have been traumatized as a child, sexually or emotionally, physically, or in terms of verbal abuse or whatever way, bullied horribly, because trust is an issue, as we talked about in the previous course, love may feel really, what in the world is love? Because part and parcel of love is that other person is someone you can trust your heart with, or you're strong enough to take the risk. Then maybe you can't trust them, but you can trust yourself in case they blow it. So this trust, who are you going to trust? Well, it'd be best if you could trust yourself. It'd be great if you can trust another person because they are trustworthy, not because you can trust. But thirdly, you may not be able to feel love because there's a part of you that's learned to live in suspicion and fear in relationships, so that love is completely, here's love, and it's completely eclipsed because you can't see it behind anger and fear and panic and trauma and anticipation of the worst. So that's another aspect of love as well. So now that we've identified all of those aspects of love, I want you to be taking notes, and I want you to realize, where am I in this whole experience of love? How do I define love? Do I define it like a poet? Do I feel it in my gut, my heart, my head? How do I manifest it? How do I show it? Can I show it because I'm motivated from my emotions deeply, or do I show it just practically, pragmatically, functionally, like giving them the aid? How do I stir love inside of us? Well, let's talk about that next. First, love requires that your physical body is activated. So you want to take really good care of your physical body, which we'll be talking about in the next course. Secondly, with all those nutrients and all those minerals and all those chemicals moving around and getting the right amount of sleep and right amount of exercise and eating really well and having the supplements and maybe some medications, you'll begin to realize I have space to feel myself. And I have space to notice another person. I have space to have compassion for this person's situation. I want to help that person. I want them to be better. And as you just begin to notice these little wake-up moments of, that's love, isn't it? I have compassion. I have empathy. I have care. I have worry. I want good things for that person. I want to be able to offer something worthwhile, maybe within my means, because maybe my means is this big or maybe it's this small, but I just want to offer something within my means. Wow, little expressions of love. That's when you begin to say, okay, there it is. I'm beginning to see and feel it. It's like a little seedling inside of me. So at this point, don't give more than your seedling has sprouted. Let's just say that you're a tree and you've just produced 3 fruits. Don't cut down your roots and your bark. Maybe you give those 3 fruits, or maybe you give 2 and you keep 1 for yourself, or maybe vice versa. Don't give more than you can give, because you'll end up burning yourself out again. You'll end up emptying yourself and feeling very depleted. As if you are, what it's like to be dehydrated and so thirsty? It's like so depleted. And that's the way it is. It's like you don't have the resources, the flow inside you to be able to do that. I think at this point I'd also like to introduce energy work, because Reiki is an energy work, and there are several different types of energy work, and the Reiki is a very loving energy. I have a whole group of Reiki individuals who are Reiki practitioners or masters who talk about how they use Reiki in a situation where abuse and trauma is evident. And the experience of Reiki is one of love, complete, universal, non-judgmental love, and it's very giving energy. So when you're able to experience it, or you have someone that gives it, there is something that's very replenishing about that. And so I want you to consider that type of energy work. Pranic energy work is similar. Healing touch is similar. A really loving combination of different types of massages that are appropriate and at the same time is very giving, gives your body a sense of gifting it. And your body needing that also awakens in that sense of love, connection. Associated to that is that sense of gratitude. Wow, thanks. And if you can wake up that feeling of gratitude, you actually are waking up things inside of you that are akin to love. It's like, wow, thanks. You are allowing the sense of love coming. Thanks is an expression of love going out. Sometimes when I work with couples, one of the things I work on them so simply is to learn how to say thank you when they listen to each other, because listening is a gift. Real listening is hard to do. It's a real gift. And to be able to say thank you after you're listened to and understood, that's you receiving that you know something has been given to you that was out of love. And when something's given to you respectfully, wow, thank you. Something's given to you because someone knows you need it. Wow, thank you. So that sense of gratitude is that sense of, there's a little bit of love there. And you want to kind of cultivate that. It's a little bit like having your garden, putting the seeds out there, and just allowing them to sprout a little bit. And then when you gift love, don't give beyond what feels like you can give and still remain relatively nourished, hydrated, with fuel inside of you. Don't give ever to a point of self-sacrifice. It's very much akin to that airline when they have the oxygen mask coming down and, parents first and then the child. You want to be able to maintain aliveness inside of you, which is akin to self-love, so that you give out of what's plenty. So if you have this much to give, you give some of it. If you have this much to give, you give some of it. That is you loving them, and it's you also keeping your resources available to keep your body feeling loved. We also talk a little bit about self-harm, and that whole experience of self-love is out of love for myself, I don't want to harm myself. Out of the hatred and anger and guilt and self-loathing, I want to harm myself. So it's just the opposite of self-love, right? So it's the same way along those lines. So that's a little bit about love. Do the exercises, read the chapter in the book, go through the meditation, and then join me for anger, which, by the way, is not the opposite of love. Well, in some cases it is, but in most cases it's not. So we'll pursue that in class number 2.